It's 6 to 8 feet tall with broad, powerful wings folded behind its back when it's standing. It has a wingspan of as much as 15 feet when it's flying. The wings don't flap, instead it glides silently and effortlessly through the air. Its body is dark gray or dark brown, but although it can fly, it's not covered in feathers. Instead, the body is smooth like leather. Its most chilling feature is its eyes, large, round, and glowing, and they glow a bright red, even when no light is shining directly on them. One witness said they glow a, quote, red like no red you ever saw, unquote. And the eyes aren't in a head. Many say the eyes are set into its chest, and it doesn't seem to have a neck or even have a head. Of course, I'm talking about the legendary cryptid monster called Mothman, a humanoid yet bird-like or moth-like creature said to be a harbinger of doom. But what exactly is Mothman? When did it appear? And what was the doom that it seemed to forecast? We'll try to answer that. Hello, I'm Tamworth Grice. Welcome to my channel, the Tamworth Grice Files. Cases that are spooky, macabre, mysterious, supernatural, and just plain weird. And in each instance, I have a personal connection to the story. So be sure to stick around to the end to hear about that. On a cold November night in 1966, just outside the small Appalachian town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, two young couples named Roger and Linda Scarberry and Stephen Mary Millette were out driving around late at night in Roger's 1957 Chevy. Point Pleasant was a rural area with few, if any, entertainment, so cruising was a popular diversion. They had just started down a remote road through a woods near several old World War II munitions bunkers in a storage area known locally as the TNT when their headlights caught something about 40 feet ahead of their car. Now, after the war, it's said that those munitions storage bunkers left behind chemical contamination, and some feel this could have mutated a local bird into a terrifying creature. On that night, the two couples saw, standing by the side of the road, almost like a man preparing to hitchhike, a dark figure with its glowing red eyes shining through the dark. Suddenly and without warning, it spread its massive wings and shot into the air. They continued driving, and it chased them, following their car at speeds of over 100 miles per hour. They managed to get away, but they were terrified, and they weren't the only ones. Over the next 13 months, as many as 100 people, both young and old, around the Point Pleasant area reported seeing the same creature, a winged humanoid figure with glowing red eyes. It was often spotted near the TNT area or soaring silently through the night sky. Some said it looked like a man with wings. Others said it resembled a giant bird, but they all, young and old, agreed on one thing: what they saw wasn't natural. Several witnesses said they were approached by men in black who encouraged them to deny what they had seen, or who had tried to persuade them that the monster was simply a giant bird and they were mistaken in thinking it was anything abnormal. But 14 years before Mothman, also in West Virginia, there was the Flatwoods Monster. On September 12, 1952, strange lights and objects appeared in the sky over Ohio and eastward into West Virginia. These lights marked the beginning of the Flatwoods Monster incident. Half an hour after sunset, a bright object passed overhead. It blazed across the sky. Then it came to rest on a hill. Curious witnesses, including West Virginia National Guardsman Eugene Lemon, climbed the hill, and among the trees they saw a red, pulsating object 25 feet in diameter. There was a nauseating smell permeating the scene. Lemon shined a flashlight and caught something in its beam. The group saw two greenish-orange eyes glowing in the dark on the face of the monster. Lemon said it was a tall, man-like figure with a round, red face surrounded by a pointed, hood-like shape. It was 10 feet tall, and it seemed to wear a monk-like robe. The monster hissed at them before floating toward the bright, landed object. An hour later, the sheriff of Sutton, West Virginia, led a posse armed with shotguns to the scene. When they arrived, there was no sign of the bright object or the crimson-faced monster. They searched the site, but saw, heard, and smelled nothing. However, the following day, a reporter from a local newspaper claimed he had discovered in the field an odd gummy deposit. UFO groups said there were evidences of a flying saucer landing. Meanwhile, according to another investigator, on the same night as the sighting, a meteor flashed over Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Skeptics felt that this could account for the pulsing red light and red tint on the face of the monster. Before I go any farther, I want to thank you and say I appreciate and love you for watching my video. So please hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons. And also I hope you'll leave a comment at the end and tell your friends about my new channel. Your support will mean the world to me. Nearly 2 decades after the Flatwoods incident, Point Pleasant was abuzz with reports of a huge beast with blazing eyes, huge bat-like wings, and the ability to fly or levitate as it sometimes chased people down the highway. These events were covered in the local newspaper, and more individuals reported seeing the flying man, including 2 firemen who called it a large bird with red eyes. One man claimed the monster was responsible for interference with his TV signal. Another said it abducted his German shepherd. A woman said it tried to steal her baby. Officials, however, dismissed the creature as a large heron, a sand crane, or an owl. Long before the arrival of Europeans, the story of a flying monster was legendary among ancient Native Americans in the area of the Mississippi and its tributaries, such as the Ohio River, on which Point Pleasant is located. For example, near the city of Alton, Illinois, there was once a rock engraving or petroglyph that has now been restored of a flying entity called the Piazza bird. Discovered by white explorers in 1673, it depicted a horned monster with red eyes, a face like a person's, a long tail, and wings. The monster was also called a bird that devours men, or a storm bird, or a thunderbird by Native Americans who considered it dangerous. The mural has been restored, as I said, to resemble the original, which eroded over the centuries. After the Point Pleasant sightings, wildlife experts from West Virginia University were consulted. They seemed unanimously to discredit the idea that what the witnesses saw was abnormal or supernatural. They claimed the witnesses had seen a heron, crane, or owl. The sandhill crane, for example, can be almost as tall as a short man, about 5 feet, with a 7-foot wingspan. However, I personally live in a wooded area by a creek, and each year we have great blue herons nesting high in the treetops. I've often seen the herons flying overhead or standing in the water. They can also be found in West Virginia. In addition, they can be nocturnal, but in my experience, this is rare. But nocturnal or not, I am here to say that there is no way a blue heron could ever be mistaken for a cryptozoological creature with dark gray skin and glowing red eyes. It looks like a large bird, period. Regarding Sand cranes, they do have a red tuft on their head that wildlife experts claim could be mistaken for glowing red eyes, but they are not nocturnal, and they are typically found on the edge of Nebraska's sandhills on the American Great Plains, not in West Virginia. Regarding owls, one theory is that of a barred owl. Barred owls are nocturnal, of course, and they are found in West Virginia. In addition, they do attack humans, and this reality is part of the plot of the Netflix and Amazon Prime series, both called The Staircase. But I used to volunteer at a raptor recovery center in southern Ohio, and knowing barred owls as I do, I doubt that one could be mistaken for Mothman. For one thing, they're too small. Their wingspan is 4 feet maximum, and they are only 4 feet tall maximum when standing. In addition, their top speed in flight is only about 30 miles per hour, so one could not have chased the two couples in the 57 Chevy at over 100 miles an hour. After the sightings in Point Pleasant, locals and reporters christened the creature Mothman, perhaps based on the Batman TV series of the time. Then came the Silver Bridge disaster. On December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge, a 700-foot high, 2,200-foot long suspension structure connecting Gallipolis, Ohio, and Point Pleasant, West Virginia, across the Ohio River, was crowded with motorists. Amid heavy rush hour traffic, the Silver Bridge collapsed. The people on it had been Christmas shopping, mostly people from Point Pleasant who had gone to Gallipolis. 46 people died, 2 of whose bodies were never recovered. Because the Mothman sightings had preceded the disaster, locals began connecting the two, with many seeing Mothman as a harbinger of doom. Meanwhile, author John Keel had come to Point Pleasant a year earlier to collect reports about the entity people were calling Mothman. These reports included apparitions, monsters, mysterious lights, unearthly noises, UFO phenomena, men in black, as I've already mentioned, ghost-like beings, and other hellish entities that haunted thousands of people in the pastoral Ohio River Valley. Keel spent a year traversing the valley as he collected stories about the monster, and he and others thought its appearance presaged a disaster. No one was sure what the disaster would be, but people expected it soon. Almost as if accountable to these predictions, on December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed, causing what is still considered the nation's worst highway bridge disaster. In 1975, Keel published the Mothman Prophecies, and it became the best-known account of events associated with the Silver Bridge collapse. The movie, based on the book, appeared in 2002 and starred Richard Gere. The towering suspension bridge was built in 1928 as a 2-lane I-bar suspension-type bridge. It was called the Silver Bridge because it was the first aluminum-painted bridge in the nation. After the collapse, many questioned why the bridge would suddenly drop into the river, and there were 3 main theories. Theory 1, a sonic boom, which I'll describe in detail in a moment. Theory 2, the curse of Chief Cornstalk, which I'll also describe. And Theory 3, a cracked eye-bar, which again I will describe. These are the 3 reasons most commonly heard to explain the collapse or why the bridge fell. Theory 1, a sonic boom. A sonic boom occurs when an object such as a military fighter jet exceeds the speed of sound. These are relatively rare now, but they were not rare at the time of the Silver Bridge disaster. Many people reported a sonic boom either just before the bridge fell or simultaneously with its fall. However, it's unlikely that a sonic boom could have caused the huge Silver Bridge to collapse. Theory 2 is the curse of Chief Cornstalk. Alternatively, some residents associate the collapse with the curse of Chief Cornstalk. Who was Chief Cornstalk? He was the Native American commander during the 1774 Battle of Point Pleasant, an important turning point in American history that some consider the first battle of the American Revolution. It is linked with the opening of what was then the Northwest Territory in the Midwest for white settlement. Chief Cornstalk later signed the Treaty of Camp Charlotte. Later, he was murdered by American soldiers while being held hostage at Point Pleasant in 1777 after attempting to maintain neutrality for the Shawnee during the American Revolutionary War. According to the legend, with his dying words, he placed a curse of death and destruction on the Point Pleasant area because the whites were taking Native American land, abusing the Indians, and killing them. Theory 3, a cracked eye bar. The third and most popular theory of structural failure involved the bridge's eye bar construction. The bridge used eye bars, straight metal bars, each with a hole or eye at each end. A steel eye bar had cracked. The crack had widened, causing the collapse of the entire bridge, according to this theory. Investigation of the wreckage soon pointed to the failure of the single eye bar in one of the suspension chains as a primary cause. The collapse led to significant changes in the way bridges in the U.S. are now constructed and maintained. Gray Barker, however, in his 1970 book, The Silver Bridge, linked the bridge collapse with the appearance of Mothman, as did Keel in his 1975 book, and as did many people in the area after the disaster. Some locals even claimed they'd seen Mothman perched like a gargoyle on the bridge in the days leading up to the disaster. To them, the creature wasn't just a monster, it was a warning. And strangely, after that, reports of Mothman in Point Pleasant stopped. However, sightings of similar winged humanoids have occurred elsewhere in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, and even in Russia. The Russian Mothman is a flying cryptid reported in Russia in September 1999. Like the American Mothman, witnesses said it was huge with bat-like wings, glowing red eyes, and a high-pitched scream. According to accounts in an Eastern European newspaper, it appeared several times. Some researchers connected it with the Russian domestic terrorist bombings that occurred in late August and September of 1999. The bombings targeted residential apartment buildings in cities including Moscow and killed nearly 300 people and injured 1,000. The Russian government blamed Chechen separatists for the attacks and used the bombings as justification to launch the Second Chechen War. Fears surrounding these attacks also allegedly helped Vladimir Putin consolidate power. Because of the tendency toward secrecy about such events in Russia, nothing else is known. But many Russians felt the flying red-eyed beast was a warning about the bombings. Now for my connection. My family is from Appalachia. I grew up there, and I have relatives all over southern Ohio, especially the Ohio River towns, as well as Kentucky and West Virginia. My father was born and raised in the Ohio River town of Marietta, about 60 miles upstream from Point Pleasant. He even went to college there as a local. And he went to school with a man who was one of the first responders when the Silver Bridge collapsed. After the disaster, he spoke at length with this man about his experiences. During rush hour, 10 days before Christmas in 1967, the Silver Bridge, as I said, was crowded with shoppers speeding home from buying gifts in Gallipolis to their homes across the Ohio River in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, or they were traveling in the other direction. Suddenly and without warning, the 700-foot-tall structure heaved, buckled, and collapsed into the water. My father told me how his friend described the panic motors and their families scrambling in the icy river, struggling to swim to safety or free themselves from being trapped in their cars. Most people in Ohio river towns can swim, but this was December. The river was freezing cold. They would have lost feelings in their limbs within minutes, and the risk of hypothermia was astronomical. And then he had a long swim to safety. The Ohio River is one of the widest rivers in America. As people fought for their lives, an ironically festive and gruesome detail, according to my father's friend, was that dozens of packages wrapped in bright Christmas paper had come out of the cars and floated in the deathly cold water around them. In some cases, the paper and ribbon came loose and floated in the waters like brightly colored litter. To this day, many locals believe the sightings of the creature who came to be called Mothman were a harbinger of the deaths and disaster that occurred when the Silver Bridge collapsed. Indeed, my father's friend said that immediately after the rescues, everybody was talking about Mothman, saying things like, "I knew something like this was coming when people started seeing that Mothman." In spite of the heroic efforts of the first responders, 46 people lost their lives, 2 of whom were never found. And as I said earlier, the event is still the worst bridge catastrophe in U.S. history. So, what do you think? Was Mothman a monster, a demonic figure there to threaten the people of Point Pleasant? Was Mothman instead a hero, an angelic figure trying to warn folks of the coming disaster? What was its connection, if any, to Native American folklore, to the Piasa bird, and to the curse of Chief Cornstalk? And is Mothman the same cryptid as the Flatwoods monster, any of the other similar-looking creatures, such as the Russian apparition? Please leave your answers in the comments. Finally, I want to say thank you. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, like, sign up for notifications, and spread the word about this channel. Also, let me know in the comments if there are other cases you would like for me to cover. I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to view my presentation, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you'll come by for the next presentation of cases from the Tamworth Grice files.